So they sneak into the house, I guess wearing shoes with wet rubber bottoms. And they notice to their horror their house is cleaned, and the animals, seeing how nervous the dwarves already are, decide to dick around with them a bit. And they send Dopey in to investigate. After some slapstick comedy, he somehow communicates to them that a dragon is sleeping in their beds, and they go to slay it. But zoink, Scoob, like that's no monster! Snow White wakes up and again has the appropriate reaction to discovering she's being watched by men. The dwarves introduce themselves and she introduces herself, and again we see how much of an impact the queen has just by the reaction of her name. Snow White offers to cook and clean in exchange for shelter, and they welcome her in. She then tells them that dinner is almost ready, but she wants them to wash up, and we get, yes, yet another musical number. Although this scene did have its moments. However, I can see why Grumpy is so grumpy, living with these people. And we cut again to the castle, where the queen is asking the mirror who is the fairest of them all. But when the mirror tells her that it's still Snow White and that the heart in that box is the heart of a pig, she becomes very angry, storming down to the dungeons where she can come up with a spell so no one will recognize her. Now, this villain may not have had a villain song like a lot of other Disney villains have, but in this case, she really didn't need one. Just this very scene right here just nailed it for her. You see the deep impact of how evil she is. And I definitely remember both the potion-making scene and the transformation sequence scaring the crap out of me when I was little. Also, another thing I found amazing about this, even though her voice changes dramatically in this scene, this is still the same voice actress. That takes talent. After we see her look up the recipe for a poisoned apple, we cut back to the cottage where we see the dwarves and Snow White are celebrating anything? And where do you find a butt pump organ these days? So after their song, we have another song where Snow White sings about how her prince will come. And thus began the theme song of every hopeful little girl in the world. Someday my prince will come. After the song, they turn in for the night, and we cut back to the dungeons where the queen is putting the final touches on the poisoned apple.
Whip, whip,
No.
When she breaks the tender peel to taste the apple in my hand, a breath will still, a blood congeal. Then I'll be fairest in the land.
Not looking like that, you won't.
The victim of the sleeping death can be revived only by love's first kiss. Love's first kiss. No fear of that. The dwarf will think she's dead. She'll be buried alive.
I'm sorry, what?
She'll be buried alive.
One more time?
She'll be buried alive.
Okay.
Seriously, I cannot understand a single word you're saying.
Also, I love how her personality has changed from cold and reserved to cackling with laughter at everything. And I mean everything. Also, I know this is supposed to be a disguise, but the idea of the disguise was to not look evil and suspicious. But come on, how can you not think that's evil? I mean, it'd be like if Hitler disguised himself as Stalin, he would still look bad. And we cut to the cottage where Snow White is seeing the dwarves off, and Grumpy gives her a final warning about letting strangers into the house. However, when... Oh, come on! How can you think that she's safe? I mean, look at the animals! Even they know she's bad! But no, our naive heroine welcomes the pleasant-looking hag into the house, and the animals rush off to warn the dwarves. The witch shows the apple to Snow White and tells her that it's a magic wishing apple that will make her deepest desires come true with a single bite. And of course she falls for it. And the dwarves arrive too late, chasing the queen away until she meets her demise.
I'll crush her bones!
When they find Snow White, they assume she's dead, but not having the heart to bury her, they lay her in a glass coffin. Because you know she's gonna look so great in a few months. And a period of time rolls by, I'm guessing a few months, when the prince, who is still singing the same song from the beginning, finds her. He wasn't kidding, he only had but one song. But when he finds her, he also thinks she's dead. And what do you do when you have a corpse this good looking and this single laying around? Kiss it. Of course the kiss wakes her, the prince carries her away, and they live happily ever after. I really love this movie, but not for the same reasons I did as a kid. When I was a kid, I loved the corny humor and the cheesy songs and all those goofy moments. But as an adult, I love the more adult moments, the darker moments, and I love how this movie managed to make it so even though this movie wasn't always cute, the darkness didn't overwhelm it, and it was still a family movie. I'm your cartoon critic, and this is no longer my room.